Okay, give our monthly report for November. Give a little background of what's been going on over the past month. This is 4th Street Pump Station. See that's well underway on construction. Started to come up above grade with the masonry walls. Also completed sections of the flood wall on the north side of 2nd Street. Anybody that's been in this area can testify to how much work's going on down there. Also working on the gate well and the upper walls in that area. On the 2nd Street pump station, placed the concrete roof slab and started installing the discharge pumping and the building electrical. On the 2nd Street flood wall, started doing storm sewer box culverts and sheet piling for the outfall. In Oxbow, we've got 21 houses that are either under construction or complete. I believe 6 of them are complete, so 15 actively under construction down there. Continuing to work on the clubhouse framing, but you can see that project's moving well along as well. So other activities that we're going to be looking at going forward in latter part of November and early December is continuing work in town on the projects I just showed. Oxbow, Hicks, and Baki continuing on acquisitions of homes, relocations. We've got let a contract for demolition of one house and move of another house, and then home construction is continuing. Minnesota DIS on October 28th, the comment period closed. DNR's reported that they got 340 valid comments, and so those are under review right now. They categorize those, and then we'll be determining how they're going to respond to them, and I think both Diversion Authority staff as well as core staff will be assisting the DNR in responding to those comments.
Bruce, is that a number that's usually consistent? Bob, would that be consistent about number 300? Or, I mean, I thought we were concerned if they got 1,000 or 2,000, that'd be overwhelming. Does 300 sound about right?
Actually, I was surprised it was as low as it is. Number, I guess we'll see what time.
Yeah. But we were concerned if we got too many replies, it may delay the final report, right? And nobody in DNR has reached out to you to say, oh my God, we're overwhelmed.
No. Again, once they've categorized those, that'll.
And you'll report back?
Yeah.
Yeah, by next month, I think we'll have the categories, and we should give a more complete update on what those comments are. So, starting on some of the permit preparation, the 404 permit for the project, as well as dam safety permits. Continuing to develop the procurement documents for the public-private partnership, and then also continuing with the schedule and the cost estimate update. That should be able to give you an update on that in December. Bid schedule starting next year. We're going to be demolishing Howard Johnson's, the old Shakey's, and Fargo Public Schools. So that'll be let in either 1 or 2 contracts for the demolition of those facilities. We're also going to be working on the El Zagel Phase 2, which includes some demolition, levee, and road closure work. Mickelson levee extension, again, demolitions of some homes and levee work going in there. Later in the spring, issuing the 2nd Street North portion of the flood wall. As noted earlier, we're working on 2nd Street South currently. And then also the continued work on under 42F2, the 2nd Street South. So with that, unless there's questions, I'll let Terry give her core report.
Good afternoon. In-town levies, we continue to review the designs and support construction For these features, this is a picture of Second Street Pump Station. We recently had the fortune of conducting a site visit or construction checkpoint meeting with a few of our design staff of both Second Street and 4th Street pump stations. The DNR EIS, we did submit comments on that EIS, and we stand ready to support a resolution of those comments if the DNR asks us to. Maple River Aqueduct Flume Study. This is the last study we're doing on this structure in preparation for a P3 contract. As you might remember, we did the physical model study that kind of determined what flow splits to use. We also did an ice study because there are areas as part of this structure that we have concerns with icing up. But this is a flume study, and it studied the flows across the aqueduct, which is located right here. And what you see below it, and I turned this so that it's going in the right direction, but the flows would go through this model, which is about 1:15 scale in this direction. And you can see the structure, the preferred structure for the aqueduct that was determined. And these are boulders that will be placed in the structure and then baffles in the low flow channel or winter channel. What we wanted to do was find the fish-friendly flows going across the aqueduct during normal flow periods on the river. But we also wanted to decrease conveyance across the aqueduct because we want flows to actually back up, I'm going to use the term back up, and go into the spillway into the diversion. So here's the diversion channel. Here's the aqueduct structure that conveys the Maple River across to the existing river channel. And then here is the spillway to the diversion. We tested 3 configurations over a variety of flows. What you see is the preferred configuration. And this was coordinated with North Dakota Game and Fish and the DNR to make sure that they are comfortable with what a proposed design might be for the aqueduct. Of course, it'll be up to the P3 contractor to determine the design the rest of the way. We expect the final report on this to be in November.
Terry, what happens with that site once you're done with this?
I believe it's being torn down as we speak.
Oh,
Yeah, we're done with that, and the U of M has to pay rent on the facility, so we don't want to incur any more costs. So I believe it's being torn down very soon, if not right now.
thank you.
Inlet control structure design. We've been working really hard on this over the last year. And this is the gated inlet to the diversion, and it's located in the northeast corner of County Road 17 and 16. So here's County Road 17, and that's north. And here's 16. So you can see that it's located in this corridor of land. It's going to consist of 3 gates, 60 feet wide by 40 feet tall. And the footprint of this structure and the spillway and then the inlet to this structure is about 1,200 feet this direction, 800 feet this direction. And we are planning to complete the design of this at the end of April so that we're ready to award a construction contract in 16 if we get federal funding. Path forward, continue to move forward on P3 and developing the RFP documents with the sponsors. We will continue design of the southern embankment elements when we're funded to do so. The next structure we'd probably jump to is the Red River control structure to design. And as Bruce talked about, we're continuing to advance permit applications for the diversion channel and the southern embankment. Mr. Chair, any questions?
Thank you, Terry. Eric? And John? Okay.
Good afternoon. The first update is on looking to hire national P3 legal counsel. The team has met so far and has taken RFQs for different national law firm providers for the P3 negotiations. We're in the process of narrowing that down. You may be asking, why do we need additional level of representation? That's a great question. P3 is more than just simply a contract, a construction contract. P3 is bringing together finance, equity, and along with construction issues on the provider side and on the government side. As a result, in order to send a message to the industry, we want to make sure that we are represented competently with national law firm that has experience in these large types of P3 tasks. And we're specifically looking for law firms that have significant P3 experience. To that effect, on making sure that we do not have what I would like to call mission creep. So we're going to have a very specific scope of services, and when we do need work from them, we'll be issuing them work directives. There's no action right today, but eventually there will be some action. We'll be working closely with the P3 National Council, but it is important to have somebody that's put these types of transactions together before, that knows the industry and knows what types of issues to look for, because it is a fairly complex financing arrangement. It is different than what is normally done, where you have the traditional finance, where we have our own engineers and we have them put together plans and specs. We bid it out, and then we fund it through a typical bond transaction. In these circumstances, the provider is going to be bringing financing to the table, and so you sort of need somebody with the expertise to recognize the different issues. And we've had a very good response to the RFQs and going through that process. I can certainly answer any questions that you might have. It's more information today than anything.
Any questions for John?
Good afternoon. Well, first I'll talk about give an update on the lawsuit with Reschlin, Wilkin, JPA. The hearing scheduled on motions for summary judgment. These are legal are coming up on Monday, November 16th, next Monday, 10 o'clock a.m. They were initially scheduled in Fergus Falls. That location's been changed to the federal courthouse in Minneapolis, so it'll still be at 10 o'clock, still on Monday the 16th, but it'll be in Minneapolis. And if you need any assistance with any of that, just let me know. The argument is sort of in a lot of ways the culmination of the merits of this lawsuit. As we've talked about before, this is the kind of lawsuit not where you end up in a jury trial type of thing, but is one where the court reviews the record that the Corps developed in making their decision, and that comes together in the form of cross motions by both sides typically. And this is an argument by the lawyers in front of the judge on the merits of the case. So it should be an interesting argument, and we're looking forward to getting to that stage and then being able to hear what the court's decision is. It's very likely, presume the court will take it under advisement, so I would not expect a decision from the court on Monday, but the arguments will be presented on Monday. So that's the status of the litigation. If there are any questions about that, maybe we'll stop and take any questions on the lawsuit. If not, then we'll move on to the next item, which is the Oxbow MOU amendment. As you recall, it was in the fall of 2013 that we formed the agreement with Oxbow after the North Dakota legislative session of 2013, where arrangements were put in place to allow a ring levy and allow funding to be used for that ring levy around communities south of the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Fargo. We entered into the agreement with the city of Oxbow with the intention of having this levy in place and providing replacement lots with infrastructure for the 40 homes that were intended to be relocated, and entered into an agreement. And at that time, the agreement was that as a lot was sold, and actually we kind of thought one lot being acquired would be traded for another, the Diversion Authority would get back the purchase price for the land plus 10%. As it turns out, the way it's working, of course, those lots are being sort of sold at a fair market value. And as a result, in good faith, very much so in good faith, the City of Oxbow and the Diversion Authority have come together to figure out an arrangement, a rework of that arrangement. The effect of this is somewhere in loose terms $6 million or more than $6 million. It'll come back to the Diversion Authority as a result of the sale of these replacement lots. What this agreement amendment does is say that if a lot, one of these new lots is being sold to someone who's relocating from within Oxbow, then the purchase price of that lot, let's just say it's $100,000, all of that, 100% of that purchase price will be, from the sale, will come back to the Diversion Authority. If, there is a need for the City of Oxbow, they've incurred costs and have certain costs to bear, as to lots that might be sold to someone other than a displaced property owner, someone that comes in from outside of the area, for example. If that's a lot that ends up being sold, Oxbow will be able to retain 25%, but 75% still comes back to the Diversion Authority. That's the gist of the matter. The rest of the agreement itself sort of just revises some of the terms. The original agreement had kind of a mortgage in place to sort of secure the debt backwards. We've developed the relationship, and we're confident we can disband that need. And just some other details were addressed in this amendment. But really the core of the agreement amendment was to deal with the reimbursement of that purchase price. And with that, we just look for your approval of it. It has been remitted to the City of Fargo, to the Cass County Commission, and this morning to the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. They were all signatories of the original agreement. This is really, in principle, an agreement between the City of Oxbow and the Diversion Authority, but the other North Dakota entities signed off on it back then, sort of at the request of Oxbow. And so we've circulated that to those three-member entities prior to today's meeting, and all have approved. And so we just seek your approval of the same document.
It has an Oxbow as well?
And Oxbow has approved, yes, thank you. Yeah.
Any questions with regard to this? Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, I was reading through this and section 3 in regards to the timing of construction and implementation. I just wanted to be certain that we weren't going to be doing anything that would interfere with the Minnesota EIS system. But from what I read here and in talking with our legal counsel, the portion that talks about the project construction deadlines of 36 months to 40 months being replaced to the project within 36 months from the date the preliminary injunction is removed or dismissed by the court, I think satisfies my concerns. So I just wanted to bring that up.
And that was the intent.
Any other questions on?
Move to approve?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Further comments? Questions? If not, we will take the roll on this.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Thorstad?
Yes.
Mr. Brodshaw?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolik?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Otto?
Yes.
Just want to compliment the City of Oxbow working with us on this. They did a great job on this one.
Okay. Thank you. Next item, policy actions. Who's handling this one? Bruce?
It's on retention issues?
So on this, let me get this, I think it's further down here. We've got 4 retention.
Bruce, are you speaking to the policy itself first, or?
Yeah, let's go. Yep, let's go with the policy itself.
Okay.
Sorry, excuse me. We've got the policy manual that's been draft for a while, but as we've gotten some submittals in, that's gone through the technical staff, has reviewed it, and it goes through how submittals come in from various project developers for retention projects, how they qualify for the project, what the impoundments have to do, and where the effects need to be indicated, and what the criteria are for the technical review of that. So this sets it out so that people know exactly what projects would be eligible or not, shows them how they need to submit it. It comes through, goes through technical staff for review, and then if technical staff agrees, recommends it to the board here for approval. And we've also, I don't know that it was in your packet, but there's also a draft contract that has been developed by staff and legal counsel as far as the agreements that they would enter into once it gets approved.
So if I could, Bruce, with the idea that there's funding available for retention projects, this is the first time that we've had something put forth that kind of outlines the procedures for people or agencies initiating some type of activity, and so this kind of puts it in writing as to the process, and so I think that's the whole intent of what is before us here is the policy manual for that, correct?
Correct.
Tim?
Senator Lewick has been looking for doing a project down south. Would he just fill this out then and apply to the water board, or who would he apply to?
I believe that the sponsor applying needs to be a water board either in Minnesota or North Dakota, so he'd need to work with the local water district and they
Are you guys aware of, has he talked to either water board? Senator Lewick? He's talked to some board.
could be the Boyd Sioux on the Minnesota side or maybe Richland County, I'm not.
Well, I wonder if he hasn't talked to the Red River Retention Group or
Could be.
maybe.
So he needs a sponsor and he needs to fill out the application, so he thinks he has a retention project that will work for us? So is that the message he needs? He needs a sponsor and to fill out
Right.
the application?
I think the policy manual defines who can apply, and it's, I forget the language, but it's a water resource district or a watershed district in Minnesota.
Of the land he wants to affect?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mary?
Thank you. Would this apply to the Cass County projects then, the rural projects? Or would that be a,
Retention projects that wish to access part of the 25 million that the Diversion Authority has put in place. It does not mean other projects that aren't asking us for some of that money.
thank you.
Do you have a project?
Well, I think we have 96 projects, right?
Well,
We,
potentially.
The Upper Maple River Dam has just been completed and constructed this fall. It's far enough from the mainstream that I don't think we'd show a measurable modeled result possibly at either Halstead or Fargo on that one. I'm not directly involved in that, so I don't know if they've run the calculation. Maybe that'll come down the road. And the other studies we have underway in Cass County, I think are likely going to have a small impact, you know, and I think the policy manual says you have to have a site identified. So our other 3 studies underway, we have some general areas where we're looking at storage, but we don't have a site identified. So we're not to the point where we can put a dot on a map and run the model and see how it comes out. So there are studies underway in Cass County. There is one new dam that is, it's actually slightly into Steele County, but the benefits are in Cass County mostly. That is online, will be, it's finished now. So there are things happening, but so far we don't have anything that'll measure and fit into the policy. So I think Boy de Sioux and Jerry's district, Buffalo Red, and Richland County are more ideally suited to time with what our policy states and for benefits to Fargo Moore.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, so the Bois de Sioux Watershed District has the North Ottawa project, and early on in 2010, you know, Mark Bittner and I talked about it, and the idea was for 25 million bucks, at least, there's determined that with 20,000 acre feet storage that they have there on the Mustinka River, there could be a 1% benefit for the city of Fargo. So, you know, for $250,000, that would be the share, but that would be meaningful for them on the front end. So I think it's a good policy in place, and now we've got a good application process, so I appreciate all the work.
Mr. Chairman,
Kevin?
Tim, on page 1, it pretty much says the qualifying project sponsors, who they are, and so if the senator wants to propose a project, he would just need to look at page 1 of this and see who this qualifying sponsor.
I don't know that we need to go through it in detail here. I have seen this quite a bit in advance and have gone through it, and if you've had the opportunity to, page through it now or previously, but what we would like is for this board to approve this policy, and that way, if whether it's Senator Lewick or anyone else who has an idea and they wish to pursue it, they simply follow this process.
I'd move to approve.
A second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments, questions?
Did we not have this before? Is this something we just
We haven't had this.
re-clarified, or?
We spent a lot of time working on the criteria. This is the final
Yeah.
draft.
Thank you.
I think we can go, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. All right, then going
Okay.
into
We'll do the
contracting.
contracting actions, and we'll actually be bringing four these watershed ones up at the end of this, but we'll walk through the contracting actions. First, going through the program budget status, and you can see proposed for this month, that we'll be going through here shortly, is about almost $3 million of contracting actions for construction, 50,000 for design and permitting. Other costs of the 231,000 are going to be these retention studies for a total of $3.258 million. I'll go through each of those categories. First, we've got a couple of utility relocation agreements, just to show you physically where they are in space. So all the different colored lines you see on there are all the identified utilities downtown. So as we do any construction, we're impacting a lot of utilities requiring relocation, sometimes temporary relocations, and then final relocations. So this month we've got an Excel power supply and transformer and distribution lines. You can see their location, and then we're also looking for relocation agreement with CenturyLink for a line that goes through First Avenue and under the river and into Moorhead. So last month when we talked about some utility relocations, a question came up about what's been done on utility relocations, because it seems like every month we're coming up with one or two. So these are all the ones that have been done to date, or this, I've got 2 pages of this, but these are all the ones that have been done to date. So to date, we've asked for about $3.9 million of relocations, and you can see the entities that we've done that with and the projects they've been associated with. With a number of these companies, we have multiple relocations agreements with each one as we impact their utilities downtown. Today, the ones that are in red are the 2 that we're looking for approval for, and then the ones in black below that are ones that we've identified that are coming up in the future, and we're getting costs from those utilities, and we'll be negotiating through the process and bringing those forward in the future. So two that I showed on the map slides, the one for Excel Energy is $65,613. And then the CenturyLink one is a large one. That's a communication line that comes in across the bridge, and it is for $2,586,742. And actually, the existing line was a copper line, so we got an estimate for replacing like for like, copper for copper. CenturyLink has chosen to upgrade to fiber optic at a much higher cost than the $2.5 million and a longer area of the project. So what we're proposing is that we reimburse them for the cost of the like for like. And so the action we'd be looking for today is for authorize the chair to sign the relocation agreements with Excel and CenturyLink at these amounts.
Why don't we handle that at this time?
6B?
What's that?
Is it 6B action item?
Well,
then?
It's
Those
one
two
of six.
items.
We've got
Move to approve.
three underneath 6B. I don't know if you want to handle individually or have me go through all of these. These are the two utility relocations.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, so Bruce, on that CenturyLink deal, so the 2.5 is for like, that's the copper portion, anything above that's on their dime?
Right.
Good,
That's our recommendation.
thanks.
Question.
Go ahead, Mark.
In the packet that was emailed out, there was probably a misplaced comment in there under this relocation referring to copper cable for 39 homes and clubhouse in Oxbow. I imagine that's just something that got into the wrong segment. But this is all in town.
This is all
on
in
First
town,
Avenue
yes.
and-
I didn't see that, I apologize.
I'll leave it up to the board here. We can handle this separately. You see some other on this sheet here that we're going to be dealing with, so whether you want to do it all together or separately.
We could do it all together, I think, right?
Okay.
Okay.
And continuing on with other construction, these are construction change orders. So the first one is change order number 4 with IBI Constructors for work package 42A2. We've previously had a work change directive that covered some of this, but generally there was some physical modeling of the pump station of the pumps that required some physical changes to the pump station for the hydraulics. Decision to cut and leave the sheeting in place rather than pulling it out because it was leaving voids and it was going to be a less stable environment out there. And then a Second Street North closure that was added to IBI's contract because it was contemplated being a separate contract, but due to timing, moved it into IBI's contract. So the total of those 3 changes are $238,871.75. And change order 3 for work package 42A1A3, which is with ICS, and that's a deduction of some exterior electrical work, installing some fence bollards and some other types of activities. So part of the utility relocation agreement with Excel, they're doing some of the electrical work that was in ICS's contract, and so we're getting a deduction from ICS. And then we've got change order 3 for work package 42F1S, changing some water main side, some signal poles, revising traffic plans, and some other adjustments, including moving some work from this fall into next spring. And that's for $96,806.17.
Any questions on those 3?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
So just some of those traffic poles, we used to have an engineer that would only let our streetlights be safety yellow. Doesn't matter if we paint them black, does it? They look way better. It's an old joke.
Okay.
Nobody's old enough to remember it. It was an old battle.
And then, so those and then the utility relocations are what you saw earlier for the total of construction changes of $9,077,000. Those are the change orders, and then we've got some design changes we're currently working on defining the scope and fee with Houston Moore Group on some upcoming services for work package 42, the in-town levies. So services during bidding and services during construction. Since these activities are going to start soon, we'd like authorization to allow them to expend up to $50,000 while we negotiate the scope and final scope and fee with them, but they need to get started within the next month. So we're asking for work change directive to authorize that. And then the final, or the 4 retention phase 1 submittals that we got in, they were reviewed by technical staff and recommended to proceed forward with the preliminary phases, the phase 1 phases. You can see those add up to a total of $231,380, and those would be consistent with the policy that you just passed.
So these 4 are, in fact, kind of following that policy we just approved. Are the 3 Boyd Sioux ones, are those the ones that are initiated by Senator Lewick? No?
No.
Okay.
Move to approve item 6B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anything further? Not, we will take the roll.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Thorstad? Mr. Bradshaw?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Ms. Sobolik?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell? Ms. Otto? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Public outreach, Mark or Kevin?
I guess I'm going to take care of that today. We did meet on Tuesday, the 10th, and typically at all of our meetings, we start off with by getting a report on the current surveying issues that are going on throughout the project. In addition to that, some of the things that we normally consistently work on with civic groups and trade associations was the Mark Bradshaw and Rocky Schneider provided some information to the Lions Club in Forest. And then on October 21st, Bob Zimmerman and Rocky Schneider gave a presentation to the Morehead Business Association. And I am pleased to say here that the Morehead Business Association came out in support of our project. And I thought that was very nice to see. In addition, I'll just add that I also was pleased to see that some additional Morehead council members sent out a letter to the editor in support of this project. So it's not just Nancy Otto and Kevin Campbell in Minnesota who support this project. I just want you to know that. So then upcoming meetings, the Minnesota Association of Floodplain Managers is meeting on the November 19th in Moorhead. And then the North Dakota Water Convention Conference will be in Bismarck in December. And the Red River Basin Conference is in Grand Forks, January 19th through the 21st. And then in the report, you can see where Darrell Vanyo and Mayor Mahoney gave a presentation to the Water Topics Committee. You can read that as you will. And then, Karen, did you want to give us a little update on the FMDiversion.com?
Sure. Good afternoon. The main thing I wanted to mention is that we're starting to see the fruits of our recent conversion on FMDiversion.com to a mobile-compatible platform. It's a desktop platform like it was before, but it also has the ability to, when you look at it on your mobile device, size to the screen, all the text and all the pictures automatically, and that's really a big deal in website communications today. So fmdiversion.com is now fully mobile compatible, and lots of people, including everybody in this room, I'm sure, many of us anyway, consume information on our phones, in some cases more, when we're out and about especially, more than we might on a desktop computer. So what we're noticing on our e-newsletter and e-news alert that we put out on occasion with stories, we have a monthly newsletter, but the last one reached more than 50% for the first time in mobile readers. So we had a 53% read rate on mobile readers and 47% on desktop readers. That happened for the first time, and it's showing that we're reaching more people where they live on the go more often. Also, our website statistics are looking good. In October, we had twice the number of page views than we usually have. That could be a result of the move to a more mobile platform when people are using their mobile devices. It could be a side effect of our team checking the website, too, to make sure everything is okay. That's possible. But we had a healthy number of page views in October as well. So the next issue of the e-newsletter will come out in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. In addition, another important part of our outreach committee that we always have is the Business Leaders Task Force. Maybe I can turn over to Tom.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Our group held a press conference on October 14th to review the Minnesota EIS. We had 3 people from our task force make presentations at that news conference, and it was very well attended, and I think we got some good publicity from it. And then that evening, we also had members of our group attend the public hearing, and I don't know exactly how many people presented. I did happen to make some comments, and I know we had some other written comments made. And I also know that we've got a bumper sticker that we've developed, and I think you can pick it up at the chamber, but I think we've also going to develop a strategy on how to get it out to various people. So we're doing a little bit of marketing.
Good.
Yeah.
We want to thank you in Minnesota, making comments. The team did a good job.
I think there was somewhere around 28 or 30, and I think it was 50% about in terms of, positive or raising concerns and that type of thing. So certainly appreciate that. Certainly appreciate the Moorhead business
Yeah.
support, and you're expanding your support with others. So thank you very much. Land management, Mayor?
Land management met yesterday and went over the purchases. We agreed with, there were 7 properties that were presented to us. We agreed with 6 of them. The one property we're unclear what to do with was the Minnesota hardship case. And concerns were raised in the Finance Committee that moved on to the Land Management Committee of if the pricing was right, I think was one of the concerns. And the second concern is whether Minnesota EIS or the DNR would be upset if we did do that hardship case. Land Management Committee just had recommended to table until the issues that the Finance Committee had identified had been addressed. So we didn't take a position or vote on it other than to delay it until, I think in talking to Commissioner Williams, there was some concerns about the pricing. It was one of the issues.
I think it was hard to find comparables, so one of the houses was way more square footage, but the land matched, so it just really wasn't a good match on the comps, and some of the committee members and staff had some ideas about how they might address this, so it just worked out better to table it.
And so that was ours. Kevin?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I got news of the 5-5 vote in the Finance Committee. It was quite a surprise to me that it was that. From my discussions with Brian Berg, our county administrator, and others, the issue in regards to the concerns about the Minnesota EIS, I think the way that this is crafted, I think certainly satisfies my concern as well as our county administrators and others in regards to not conflicting with the EIS process as it goes forward and Minnesota's position on activities on the Minnesota side. I would certainly strongly encourage you, or the Finance Committee, to bring this up again and try to find out. I can certainly understand, and I agree, if the Finance Committee also had the concerns with the dollar value. I don't want to get into that. That's not for me to get into, but the process of the hardship, it's my understanding this met with 100% approval through the Hardship Committee, and I don't think they should be treated any differently because they're on the Minnesota side of the river. And I would hope that the Finance Committee can bring that up again as soon as possible.
Concern of one of the people in the land management is that it would upset the DNR. Do you have any concerns about that?
I just gave you my opinion on that. I think the way the offer is crafted to them, certainly, I'm comfortable with that it does not violate any issues with the DNRs, or the Minnesota DNRs.
Mark?
We had some discussion on how to bring this forward, and we're having our team dig into the legal issue. We might end up with a memo regarding the legal issues and the DNR issues regarding this hardship property in Minnesota. And also our acquisition team's looking at the comps again, and we're suggesting if we have another committee meeting next week, we might bring this back with new or more information. If we don't have any new comps, we might have more information on the comps, and we'll have a more definitive answer on the DNR and lawsuit angle that was talked about.
There were many people in the discussion wanted to do what they quoted the right thing for this couple, or what they thought would be reasonable. But I think, as Mike says, I think the concern was the comp. It was one of the issues. And
I
if the
think
DNR
time
is
is
not
an
an issue,
issue. You know, they have a hardship and health issues, so I don't think we want to delay this, but we need to get answers that were brought up, to the questions brought up.
And since we're meeting next Tuesday, I believe it is?
Yep.
If you have that information, and it's a combined finance, land management, so
we should be able to address it.
We'll aim for that.
And then, Mark, do you want to go over?
Go ahead,
Can I just
Kevin.
follow up with one question? If the Finance Committee were to meet next week, ultimately this goes to your board for approval anyway, is that correct? But would we be required to have the approval of that through this diversion authority after the Finance Committee would meet, if it meets the Finance Committee's approval and goes to the...
The way that it's structured, and anyone can certainly chime in after I've made my statements here, I think I'm correct in this. If we have approval through the finance and land management, that's the recommendation that goes to the Cass County Joint Water Board, and they then take the action, and so we don't really address we don't address those at the Diversion Authority Board.
I didn't want us to have to wait another month to come here.
Yeah, right.
If that was the case.
So it is correct, Mark? That's the way you understand it?
So if the committees meet next week and
Yeah.
make a recommendation on this and other acquisitions, we'll have a special Cass County joint meeting to consider it. So we meet by phone on short notice after we give the legal notices and things. So we can meet and take action and get the ball moving.
And I might also further add that this board has every right to raise the questions as you did, or on any property that has been approved, they have a right to raise a question on it. But the process, has followed finance, land management, Cass County Joint Water Board, and but the board has every right to talk about any of them.
One final question. What time is that Finance meeting on Tuesday?
4. Tentatively.
Eric may want to stand up. He's getting some
I
pushback.
saw
so-
tentatively, but maybe that's different.
Yeah, we've been working to try to schedule the next special joint meeting of Finance and Land. There was some talk of having it next week, ran into a few roadblocks, and so right now it looks like Tuesday, the 24th, is sort of appearing to be the best date. So nonetheless, we will be rerunning the comparable analysis for that Anderson property, and we're expecting there'll be a few other properties that we would bring forth at that meeting, and then we would ask the joint board to meet shortly thereafter to bless those decisions.
Can you just let me know when that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mark, you want to go through the rest?
Sure. In your packet is a land management summary, as we typically do every month. Highlights this month, we closed on the Howard Johnson property, and we have, it says bids awarded for Park East demolition project. That's a Diversion Authority demolition. And the 2 home demolitions in Oxbow, that's a Cass County joint contract. One of those will be demolished. One of them may end up getting moved there. In-town negotiations going on. We did reach agreement with Fargo Public Schools, or I guess an agreement in principle, and now they'll put together a purchase agreement and the documents to cross the Ts and dot the Is. And we're likely to have proposals for Shakey's and MEP's property in the near future. Side Street's been relocated and they're open for business. And we did send right of entry letters to property owners on the north side of the project, kind of the downstream end of the diversion channel, affected by work package 1 through 7. And this is to start the process to do surveys and pre-acquisition work on these properties. So if we're kind of getting teed up for construction start next year, and there's a lot of preliminary steps before we can acquire property. So this is to get surveys done so we can get real estate drawings in place so that we can give those to appraisers to start talking to people. So it takes many months of lead time to get that before you can actually start negotiations. So that is beginning. We did meet this morning and acted on the recommendations from the committees from this week. We did not act on the hardship acquisition that was continued at committee, so that's still on the table. We did move forward on all the other actions. There was a house at El Zagal area, a house in the Mickelson area that we approved the acquisitions on. We approved the Fargo Public Schools acquisition. We approved the 3 Oxbow homes that were in the packet, and we approved the exchange agreement for the farmland in the Oxbow area. So that's my report. Are there any questions? Maybe good to have comment a little on security issues. In town, we have hired private security in addition to, the service that the Fargo Police Department provides. And we've had that going on at the Park East facility and now at the Howard Johnson and Side Street property. There has been some incidents at the Howard Johnsons, and there have been some arrests made, and we have ramped up security at that area to try to prevent problems. And so both the Fargo Police Department and our private security is ramping up that and try to get a handle on that. We have, a month ago, we did approve reimbursing Oxbow if they get an agreement with the Cass County Sheriff's Department for increased service in the Oxbow area. There was a little bit of controversy on that action, and want to explain that a little bit. As we acquire more property down there and there's more construction going on, there's going to be need for more security, both private security and hopefully some law enforcement, more patrol down there. We're buying a third of the town, in essence, and causing a third of the town to be rebuilt in another area. So there is a real need for security to protect our investment there until the homes are eventually moved or demoed. We need to preserve things there.
Mayor?
Why would that be a cost? I mean, isn't the sheriff's department don't they have a responsibility to provide safety throughout the county? I mean, I'm just curious why we would pay extra for that. Would it be just
Well-
that the county would have to pick that up as a,
We do, but I believe we've only got 2 deputies out at any given time, or well, during the day a little more, but it's, you know, they could be clear on the other end of the county.
The,
Go ahead.
sure, the arrangement we have with a number of the small towns, just like Fargo has their own police department, the small towns have their choice of having their own police department or contracting with the sheriff's department. But when they, in most cases, they choose to contract with the sheriff's department, but the towns do pay a fee for that service. And I think the concern we heard from some of the other towns when they heard that Oxbow might have free sheriff's support, they were saying, what about us? We pay. So that was kind of that we were.
so that
thing we
was
were
the
sensitive
controversy,
to.
the 40 grand people got concerned about?
They said, why is the county, and they looked at it as, why is the county going to provide free service for Oxbow and charge
And
us?
I
there's
do-
several,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mary.
there's several communities that do that in addition to having school resource officers that are provided by Cass County. But we don't have anybody right now lined up to specifically be in Oxbow. That would take probably doing some additional hiring.
Mark, I have a question. When you said we've hired, you're talking about Cass County Joint Water?
We have hired, Cass County Joint has hired private security, Sentry
Okay,
Security.
for Fargo.
For patrolling the Park East Apartment Complex
Right.
and the Howard Johnson
Okay, and then
facility.
is that, and has it been reflected back to the Diversion Authority to pay for?
Yes, it's in your bills.
And then my next question is, outside of Land Management Committee where you brought it up, this is the first time that I was aware that we might be paying for security as a diversion authority, and I think that this board needs to weigh in on whether that's something that is acceptable. It's just my feeling.
Well, from my feeling, it's the Diversion Authority's property. It's not our property. The Diversion Authority, when the water board buys it, it's their property to protect. And we will offer the services we normally for the city of Fargo to help out, but obviously on an abandoned property, you would have to have some type of security. Howard Johnson's an easy picking to go and break windows or do something to it. So it would seem to protect, quote, the property till it's destroyed, I guess, but
And
liability.
that might be part of a bigger discussion too. We are paying to maintain property. We're mowing lawns, weeding flower beds on property we've bought. You know, we're paying electrical bills until such time as things are shut down. So a lot of those things are ongoing expenses. They're included in the bills we present for reimbursement, and we probably should have a fuller explanation of how we're going to handle that.
Mr. Chairman, and I think it has to do too with risk management for the reduction in liability, because we do own these properties, and if somebody's trespassing on them and gets hurt, who's liable? So I think that it does deserve a bigger discussion, I think, yeah.
Perhaps take it back to finance to talk about.
Well, what I'd like to do is, because I don't know exactly what this is costing us per month and what it might cost us in Oxbow, if you decide that, I would ask that you bring this to the Finance Committee the next meeting and at least have a Finance Committee weigh in, and then it'll come back here.
All right.
That's the end of our report, right, Mark?
Yes.
Anything else? Any questions from the group? Thank you.
Okay?
One more thing, sorry. So what's the timeline for tearing down the Howard Johnson and the Park East?
Bruce, do you want to answer that?
Sure,
January?
we've let the contract for Park East already.
Yep.
So that will be coming down probably in December.
Right.
We have not yet let the contract for Howard Johnson's. We've got 3 properties downtown to demolish, and we're looking at whether we pull out Howard Johnson's to accelerate the demolition of that, because we also have to do Fargo Public Schools and the old Shakey's.
So what would be the soonest that Howard Johnson would go?
The soonest would probably be, I'm going to say March, by the time we get it let and bid and get a contractor.
Are you
Chair-
thinking about a
Chairman-
parking lot on there?
Oh, better.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to add to that, we had a brief discussion yesterday, but didn't bring anything to this board for action. We would anticipate that demolition project will probably be over $100,000, so that requires us to go through a detailed competitive bid process. The only way around that would be if this board would declare it to be an emergency, then we can avoid the competitive bid process, and we could negotiate, for instance, with the same contractor that's there tearing down the Park East. So that's something this board could consider. If you wanted to make such a motion, we could accelerate the process.
I was more along the line of preserving it just a little longer, but we'll talk about it later. So let's see.
Go ahead, Mark.
Probably mention that Howard Johnson, we did allow other people's use of the property similar to Park East. Habitat for Humanity has been in there and salvaged what they thought they could salvage. They're maybe going to take one more walk through and see if there's something else they can find a use for or sell. We also are going to allow the Fargo Fire Department access for training exercises. And this morning we approved a memorandum of understanding with the SWAT folks, and they can use that property for training as well. So we're trying to get as much use out of these things before we demo them as we can. And
Great.
I've asked our crew to be creative on ways to use them.
Is that the use you want?
We got more, but we'll talk about it.
Okay, Mike.
Good afternoon. Finance met yesterday, and I think you've got everything in your packet as far as the financial statements. Of note in the financial statements is that we have about 2 months left of the fiscal year, and we have spent or obligated $173.7 million of our $224 million budget, so I think we're in pretty good shape budget-wise. As discussed earlier, we recommended approval of 7 property acquisitions, and we had a 5-5 vote on the one that is still in question. I would like to note that the information that we got in our packets on the properties was much more complete this time and much more understandable, and subsequently the discussion on it was kind of quick and reasonable, and that went a lot smoother. We also approved a land acquisition directive for the southern border of the diversion. This allows them to start contacting the owners and start some things going. That'll come back to us at some point in time as purchase agreements and that sort of thing. We got a first look at our draft 2016 budget. This board will hopefully get that budget next month. It would be nice if we have an approved budget early in the year rather than like this last year where it was quite a bit later. So the budget will be presented after it's approved by the Diversion Authority to all of the 6-member entities for their approval also. So some of the things included in the 2016 budget will support the completion of the Minnesota EIS project, conduct additional mitigation, cultural and environmental necessary for implementation of the project, help to make us shovel-ready by conducting property acquisitions along the diversion channel and inlet structure, as well as completing property acquisitions in Oxbow and for the in-town levees. And of course, that's ongoing. Build in-town flood protection systems for key portions of downtown, and advance the public-private partnership procurement model for ultimate implementation of the permanent flood control project. We'll begin looking at ways to finance that 2016 budget. We do have approximately $60 million on hand, both through loan funds and the sales tax monies that both Fargo and Cass County have. And we still have monies appropriated by the legislature. I think there's approximately $160 million left to draw down. So we've got some resources to carry us through for a few months.
We also received a draft of the cost accounting management system that's going to be implemented. This is kind of important. It kind of ties together the information that the Water Resource District is generating and the City of Fargo is generating. Sometimes Kent and I have sticker shock when all of a sudden we get a bill from Cass County Joint Board where we didn't know, what was coming, and it's in like the $5 or $6 million range. So hopefully we'll get that all implemented early next year. Any questions? If not, you have a list of bills in your packet at
Move to approve item 9B.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Not, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes?
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Brodshaw?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Ms. Sobolik?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell?
Aye.
Ms. Otto?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any other business? If not, next meeting, this is a date change, take note, due to the water meetings in Bismarck. So it's December 17th. With that, if there's no further business, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? And remember, we have another meeting after this. North Dakota said. Call the meeting of the Dakota Metro Board to order. First item is minutes from last meeting. You have those attached to the agenda.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Next item, the financial. You'll see a sheet here with the recommended motions. This basically approves exactly the expenditures that we did the previous meeting.
Move to approve the appropriation of funds for October expenditures.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Take the roll, please.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Bradshaw?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Ms. Sobolik? Aye. Mr. Williams?
Aye.
And then all of the contracts that Bruce went over, we can do that just with the motion, and you see them listed there.
I would move to approve as presented all of the contracts listed under number 3.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Bradshaw?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Ms. Sobolik?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Any other business? If not, next meeting, December 17th. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
I don't know.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you.
And even if you have to have